I just realized that I was muted. Okay, so let's do this over again. How's it going, everyone? So welcome to Global Hack Week, Open Source Day 2. I see folks pouring into the chat. So welcome, glad to have you all here. And check in if you have not already, including the link right here. So we have a great workshop in store for you all today, continuing on with our Defang series. So if you have not heard of Defang yet, make sure to check them out. They're a great platform to help you develop, deploy, and debug open source applications. But you'll learn all about them more in today's session with our special guest from Defang. So for that, without further ado, I hope that you all can join me in welcoming Raf.
Hey folks. Hey Alina.
Hey. Yeah, take it away. I'll leave you to it.
Awesome. Sounds good. So some of you were here yesterday. I'm seeing already a couple names in the chat that I recognize. So we're going to build off of what we did yesterday to some extent, but I'm going to recap a little bit for those of you who were not here. So I'm going to share my screen. Share screen. There we go. All right. So quick recap is that basically Defang is a tool that helps you deploy applications to the cloud much more easily than you normally would be able to. So if you've got a Django project, a Flask project, a Next.js project, anything like that, you can deploy those a lot more easily than you would without Defang. I'm just gonna double check something. Is my screen visible right now? Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. So yeah, this is Defang. If you were here yesterday, you might recognize this meme generator project that we put together. It did eventually come together. So mlhdefang.xyz. Oh no, I still have cached stuff. It was working on my phone, so I just need to, I should have rebooted my machine. But it should work fine for other people. Yep. So anyway, we talked yesterday about how to deploy this this project. Basically, we've got this Docker Compose file, a little bit of code, and we got things up and running with Defang. But we're gonna get a little more into some more complicated stuff. Hey Nish, hey Shem. Hey Abhinav. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, so we're gonna get into some stuff that's a little bit more complicated today, and to be honest, I think a little bit more exciting because we're gonna talk about how to deploy open source AI models yourself into your own sort of cloud environment, which is pretty neat. So what we're going to do is, or actually, let's talk about why you might want to do this first. So why would you want to host your own AI model? Like if you can use the Anthropic APIs or OpenAI APIs or a whole bunch of other ones, like why would you do your own? Well, one thing is it can be less expensive. So depending on like how heavily you use these APIs, if you can run it on your own hardware, it might cost you less. Of course, that depends on the scale, the type of model, all kinds of stuff like that. But it can be a thing that you should consider. Another thing is you can explore a wider variety of models. Like there's a bunch of like small, more specific models out there that can help you out with specific tasks that that the big, more generalized models. Malik, okay, cool. Can't. So the larger, more generalized models aren't going to be as good at. Finally, and I think this is kind of key, and it's a thing that we're hearing people talk about a lot these days, is legal requirements. So are you using an LLM in a context where maybe there's sensitive data that you shouldn't be sending to OpenAI or to Anthropic? If you can host the LLM yourself, then you don't run into any of those legal problems. Yeah. So we're going to use this really cool tool, open source project called Ollama. So if you go to ollama.com, you can kind of get a sense of what they do. Basically, and you can find them on GitHub. So it's all over here. Very neat tool. So basically what they do is they've built this super cool project that allows you to very easily run open source or open weight large language models on your own hardware. There are a couple considerations, but by and large, you should be able to just download Ollama, run a couple commands, and get things up and running on your own laptop or desktop or whatever, your own machine. But you can also get that up and running with Defang in the cloud. And you can see, like we were talking about the wide variety of large language models that are out there. You'll see there's so many of them. And some of them are really good at things like code, and others are good for, like here, Dolphin Coder. What's the other one that was Gemma? There's Code Gemma is supposed to be really good to deal with code. Some of them are good for, I don't know, a wide variety of stuff. So let's talk about how to get something like that up and running yourself. So the easiest way, so we're kind of going to do a very similar workflow to yesterday. So with that in mind, if any of you were here yesterday and, recognizing a lot of names, let's head over to the portal if you were here yesterday. If not, you can skip this. Oh, I don't have my project up. If you do have a project up and running, you'll see that there's going to be a delete command. So you can just copy that command, head back into your terminal, run it, and you should be good to go. So you can actually see I ran this on a project earlier. So Defang down, project name, Ollama. So you'll have your own project name. Maybe it's the meme generator, maybe it's something else. But yeah, basically, let's take down that project so that now we can put up a new project. Once that's good to go, also when you hit the down, when you run the down command, you can do Control-C and stop the output. It'll keep going in the background, so you can move on without having to wait for it to finish. Cool. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to head to the Defang homepage again. For anyone who needs that link, it is here, defang.io. Yeah, defang.io. Once you're there, we'll head down to samples, and we're going to type Ollama. And we're going to click on that, and we are going to click one-click deploy. I've noticed this every once in a while. It sort of hangs. I'm kind of curious if this happens for a lot of you. So eventually what it'll do is it'll redirect you to this GitHub page, basically to clone our sample. For anyone who was not here yesterday, the reason that we do this sort of redirect is to make sure that you actually have an account with Defang, because what's going to happen is once you create this repository, it's going to immediately deploy to Defang. So I'm going to say here, Ollama MLH. So I'll click create repository. And immediately what we're going to see here is that this workflow is going to start, and we're going to start deploying. So for anyone who was here yesterday, this should look pretty similar. There's going to be a couple differences though, which is you can see here, we actually now have two different services. So yesterday someone asked the question, like, what are the limits? Which we talked about that a little bit. But one of the things was that you can only have one project within the free tier in the Defang playground, which is where things deploy to by default. But you can have multiple services. So if I go to my Defang portal now, so portal.defang.dev, you can also just click these links here. So you'll see now that we have one project, but we've got multiple services. And so both in this red state because they're still building before they launch. So what I think we can talk about a little bit with that is let's talk about the structure of a project that has multiple services. So the first thing I'm going to do is to show you how this works is I'm going to head over here and I am going to clone this code. Head back into my demos folder and git clone that. Sweet. And I'm going to open that project. Okay, so this is our project. So we'll see here that it's a little bit different than the one we were looking at yesterday. So we've got our README, which we have READMEs in every sample. We have this compose file. So this is similar to the one that we looked at yesterday, but it's a little bit longer. It's a little bit more complicated. There are a couple services this time. So we've got an OLAMA service and a UI service. Basically, what we've got here is a Next.js application. So any of you who are Next.js developers, you should be right at home. Basically, we're just using Next.js as an interface for a chat. But then instead of sending those chat messages to an API like Anthropic or OpenAI, we're sending those messages to this OLAMA service. So let's see if this has deployed yet. Okay, it's coming up. It should be good to go pretty soon. So yeah, basically it's a Next.js application, and you'll see there's a couple interesting things here. When we have multiple services, any of you who are familiar with Docker, you might recognize this. Anyone who's not, we're going to talk a little bit about networking. So here we see we've got this OLAMA endpoint, and it's OLAMA 8000. So if you aren't familiar with Docker and Docker Compose and how it sets up networks, basically when you have a service here, you can access that by its service name. So its service name becomes its host name. And OLAMA, we have configured to run on port 8000. So basically, we can reach OLAMA by going to OLAMA 8000. So that's what we're saying here in our OLAMA endpoint in Next.js. And so basically, what happens is we're going to have this chat interface that we're going to look at in a second, and it sends requests, or it's like you're interacting with this Next.js app. The Next.js app will then forward requests to this OLAMA service, which is like using the OpenAI API. It's going to respond back to our Next.js app, which is going to stream things back to the user. So close. Come on. Actually, I'm just going to ask, has anyone already built any sort of chat applications or anything with AI before? And if so, what did you use? Anthropic, OpenAI? What about I'm in Canada here, so there's Cohere also has an API. Mistral has an API. There's a lot of really cool stuff out there. OpenAI, cool. All right. So, Grok, OpenAI, Olama for inference, LangChain is a framework. Nice. All right. So it seems like you have a bit of experience with this stuff. We actually have a LangChain sample. I think we're just using OpenAI, but we should put together a sample to show you how you can use LangChain with your own sort of hosted open source model. Maybe we'll add that to our backlog. Okay, so things are up and running now. You can see if I head to UI, I can click on this, and we've got this sort of little intro message. Hi, I'm Defang, a fun chatbot. If you want to learn more about Defang, the Defang tool, head to that URL. Basically, that is over here in source page. We've got this default message. But I want to show you something else, which is this chat route. So in here, we have the system message. So what I have set as the system message, for those of you who aren't familiar, basically like you can think of that as like the personality of the bot you're interacting with, or like instructions for it on how to respond. So I've basically said you're a quirky llama named Defang with a passion for cloud computing. So if I ask it a question, who are you? The first time you ask anything, I feel like it's been a little bit slow, but overall yeah, it's pretty fast. So you can see we've got this streaming response. It's using the AI SDK, which you can install pretty easily from npm, and integrates really nicely with Next.js. And so yeah, this is actually a response that's coming from our own hosted large language model right now. Has anyone in the chat, have any of you actually tried to run any AI stuff on your own machine or in the cloud or anything like that? I'd love to hear if you've ever given that a shot. Because one thing that you'll notice is that, it was pretty fast, but it wasn't the fastest. And that is because by default, what we have set up in this sample is something nice and easy for people to get started with, which is we're using the Llama 3.2 1B, like 1 billion parameter model, which is very small. And the reason for that is that by default, with Defang, if you're deploying to our playground environment, you don't have access to GPUs. But if you did want to deploy to your own, oh, sweet. Samir has something deployed. Let's give it a shot. Epic. Cool. Yeah, so nice. So yeah, you'll see those those are working just fine. And the reason for that is we've got this really small model, but you don't have access to GPUs. So it works. They take a lot of energy and are often slow running locally. Yes, totally. So these things are pretty heavy, right? Like they're heavy to run, and by default with Defang, you do not have access to GPUs, and that's really the thing that you'll need to get these things deploying fast or running faster. So I just want to point out for the future, if any of you do want to try and deploy a larger model with that runs faster, can do a lot more stuff, you can head over to docs.defang.io and you can take a look at this Defang BYOC section. And basically, this will explain a little bit about how to get things up and running in your own AWS account. With that, you can also see GPU counts with. So there is a thing that you'll need to keep in mind, which is that by default, AWS doesn't give you any GPU quota. So you'll actually need to ask AWS, like, hey, please give me one GPU. So there's this tutorial here, deploy a GPU powered application with Defang. That one I can link to as well. Here we go. That is going to give you, the instructions you need to get a GPU powered application up and running in your own AWS account. So there are a couple things that you'll need to switch if you want to do that. So we've left a bunch of comments here that kind of explain how this works. Basically, with every Defang service, you can also specify like how much memory you want or how much CPU you need. There's another section here called devices and capabilities. So if you uncomment that, you will get, like, Defang will deploy a service with a GPU attached to it. So you'll be able to deploy much larger models, for example, Gemma 7B. I'm not going to demo that right now, but figured you should know because it's really fun. You can put together some really cool stuff. So let's do a little change up here. Anyone have any ideas for like what's a system prompt we could put in here? I just want to show you like how easy it is to basically start building a completely different personality, a more useful bot or something like that. You are a helpful computer science assistant. People will ask you questions about their software and you give them nice, concise tips on how to fix or optimize it. Cool. We can try something like that. So for anyone who was not here yesterday, there's two different ways that you can deploy this change. The first is, because we cloned this from one of our samples, you have this GitHub workflow that comes with it that'll nice, I love it. Responds like Yoda would. Actually, yeah, let's add that. You always respond like Yoda would. Awesome. Cool. So we have this GitHub workflow. So by default, if you do a git push to this to your repo, it's going to deploy those changes automatically. The other option you have is you can install the Defang CLI. So for anyone who wasn't here yesterday, head over to defang.io and you can copy one of these commands depending on which operating system you use. The shell command should work fine for Mac or Linux. Brew actually also should work on Mac or Linux, but only Linux if you have already installed Brew. Actually, yeah, Mac doesn't come with Brew installed by default either, but it's pretty common. Windows, I think all new versions of Windows come with winget. And if you're a bit more hardcore, which I'm not, you can use Nix. I generally just stick to the shell command. So you can go in here, paste that. I'm just going to remove this defang generate. and that will install the latest version of Defang onto your machine, at which point you should be able to run Defang version. And if you want to do anything with this, you'll need to do Defang login. I'm already logged in, but yeah, that should pop up a window and get you up and running. Cool. So we have this new system prompt. So I'm just going to go ahead and type, you know what, git status, yep. Update system prompt. Oops. So I push that. And if I head back to my repo, you'll see that that will trigger the GitHub action. And we are deploying our update. I am actually going to go ahead and skip to something else while this is running, which is that I'm going to try and do the same thing as yesterday in terms of adding a domain. So we can actually do something else here, because we're going to add a domain. So we're going to do, oops, not here. That should be down here. So UI domain name, we're going to do chat.mlh defang.xyz. That's a domain that I bought yesterday. So in here, I'll do defang, actually compose up again. So this is the same thing that just happened in the GitHub action. So that is your other option. So if you install the CLI, you can do defang compose up, and it'll deploy everything in your compose file. And now that we have this domain name here, we can do defang cert generate. So it'll detect that we don't have that CNAME. So I'll just grab that. And I will hop over to Cloudflare, which I use to manage domain names. And I will add a record, a CNAME for chat. I'll turn that off and save. And hey, is properly configured, triggering cert generation. Very exciting. That was very fast. Yesterday it was a little slow. In the meantime, let's check up on our services. Okay, so they're still redeploying. I guess I did do a couple redeployments all at once. Amrit says, today I created a simple application where you just enter a prompt and get a response, use Gemini API trying to deploy it, and maybe have real users. Epic, that's super cool. So the other model that we have here as like one of the sample things that you can just uncomment, that is, it's not Gemini, but it's one of Google's open source models that comes from their DeepMind labs. So Gemma is like Gemini's cousin. And it's a pretty cool model. I find it works quite well. Hey, So this is what we were looking for yesterday. So you can see that normally this is pretty fast, pretty straightforward. It'll just check that your domain is properly configured, generate a cert. This is using Let's Encrypt. So yeah, also relying on some nice open projects. Okay, so now I should be able to head to chat.mlhdefang.xyz once this thing is up and running. So it's running a build, but yeah, we'll wait for that to happen. And Gemma sucks compared to Llama. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they all have pros and cons. I feel like Code Gemma is pretty neat. Um, 5 fast API servers that orchestrates LLMs, API based and local, and a Next.js UI. Could I use Defang for deployment, and would it be treated as 2 different services? Fast API server that orchestrates. Cool. Yeah, let me know, Rogue Genesis. If you have any success. I feel like it. I don't know. My I didn't experiment with it a whole lot, but my experiments with it for like some pretty basic like code stuff worked out really well. So yeah, I think it was neat. VRX. If I have a fast API server that orchestrates LLMs, API based and local, and a Next.js UI, could I use Defang for deployment, and would it be treated as 2 different services? So your fast API service server would be one service. LLMs, when you say orchestrates LLMs, are you like spinning them up and down, like API based and local? Local, I assume you mean like running as a service, like what we're doing here. If so, like yeah, you should be able to get that done with 2 or 3 services. Either something similar like this, right? So fast API could be the API, the interface, and then you have another service like this that would run an LLM. You could then also, depending on what you're doing in your fast API service, if you're using sort of APIs as well as hosting your own, I think you could just do that, yeah, with 2 services and maybe add a third for the UI. So the reason that I use Next.js for this is in part because you kind of have like, it's a sort of full stack thing where you can have that API as well as your UI all in one place. But yeah, you could split out that API and put it in fast API if you want the benefits of working with an LLM in Python. Since there's so much Python tooling out there. So yeah, then I think your setup would end up being something like 3 services. So UI, API, and LLM. Yay, awesome. I love it. Yeah, it's pretty neat. I find there's a lot of advantages to being able to host your own LLM. And I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job making it really simple to get up and running. So hopefully that all works out well for you all. If anyone tries running this with a GPU in their own AWS account, I would love to get feedback. Like if you can shoot us a message in our GitHub issues. We're at github.com/defanglabs/ Defang is probably the best place to put it. So any issues you have with the Defang tool, getting things up and running, you can just plop them in these issues here. I'll actually just put a link to that here. Because yeah, we want to make it as simple and smooth as possible for you all to get these things up and running. Yeah, alternatively, there's another repo that we've got, which is the samples repo. Let me know if there's like anything you want to see that you want to get up and running, you're not entirely sure how to do it with Defang, or in general, and we will put something together for you. So you can see here we've got a bunch of issues, different frameworks and stuff that we're planning on making just dead simple to get up and running. Yeah, anything you might want to see in here, let us know, and we'll put together a sample. So this is, oh, I think that should be pretty good to go. Oh no, it's pulling the, so the thing with the models is they're always a little slow to deploy because they're really big. So it just takes a while to like download and get things up and running. Even the small ones are, you know, a couple of gigs. All right, so that is running now. So let's see. Do I have, let me, this might be too long for it. These small models don't handle long stuff very well. Can you help me optimize my code? Also, this is a tiny model, not optimized for coding, so this might just be terrible. We might just get a completely just horrible response in here. I guess we'll find out in a second. We're testing it live. Why isn't Venerable? Oh yeah, I forgot that we asked it to respond as Yoda. Fine, minor correction here. There is process.m.load model should be process.env.load model. It's not needed. Yeah, anyway, you can kind of get a sense of how easy it is to like make this stuff work, right? You just update that prompt and you've got basically a whole new personality in here. And even this, you know, for TypeScript to guarantee that actually does exist. I mean, I guess I could have done something a little bit different, provided a default value in there, but Yoda Llama, yeah. A final note I have, error handling you should consider adding. What if an error occurs? You should add try-catch blocks to handle such errors. May the code be with you. And may the code be with you all too. Nice. Okay. I'm going to check and see if this runs. So we can see here it says chat.mlhdefang.xyz. I always have DNS caching issues. So let's see if the DNS gods are with us today. Hey, it works. No caching. All right, I guess I hadn't hit the URL before, so I'm just going to post this here. You all can chat with Yoda Llama at that URL. So that is chat.mlhdefang.xyz. The DNS force is with me today, indeed. Yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to cover. We could talk a little bit about. Where's my Yeah, so that's basically it. Does anyone have any questions? Do you have anything you'd like to try? Any any questions about Defang, about this Docker Compose structure? We can dig deeper into the structure of the project. We can talk a little bit about local dev. Actually, let's do that. You know what? Shoot any of your questions in the chat, but I'm going to show you how you would develop this locally first. So yesterday we talked a bit about this as well, but basically for those who weren't here, what we're trying to do with Defang, one of the things we're really trying to make easier is for anyone who's ever used Docker, that you should be able to kind of reuse the same commands that you use with Docker for the cloud. So if you've ever run Docker Compose up, you know, we want you to be able to switch Docker with Defang when you're ready to go to the cloud. And we're going to try and do that with a whole bunch of other Docker commands. So just try to have feature parity, but where everything that we're doing is for the cloud and Docker is for local. With that in mind, a lot of our samples will come with this compose.dev.yaml file. And the reason for that is by default, your compose.yaml file is what you want to run in the cloud. It's your production service or services. But a lot of tools like I know Django and Next just off the top of my head, I think Rails as well, they have sort of dev modes, right? When you're building, you want sort of hot reloading, you want other features like in terms of logging, debugging, like all of that stuff is a little bit different. Yay! I'm happy to hear that, Shem. Glad to hear you're having a good experience. So yeah, basically we have different workflows for dev and prod. So what we've done is we have these compose.dev.yaml files. So if you run docker compose-f compose.dev.yaml up. Whoops. I think I renamed these. So that will not work for you right now. I need to fix that sample. But basically the idea is that you should have dev mode available so that you have that kind of hot reloading. So I'm just going to run this Docker compose up. And we will see what happens. Error response driver, external connectivity. Oh, because I already have something running there. What do I have running there? Let's just do kill the process on port 3000. Let's try that again. Oh, because it was yeah, okay. Not great. If I do that, that should work. Just give me a second to double check my Docker stuff on the other screen here. Docker PS. Okay, we've got the cd compose down. This is actually the project from yesterday that was still up and running. Okay, so let's try that other command again. So docker compose -f compose.dev.yaml up. Oh man, this is not ideal. I think that's because I'm doing the volume. Okay. Yeah, clearly I have a little bit of cleanup to do on this sample. So cd ui npm I. We'll do that. Technically, ideally, you should do it a little differently. Actually, it might say in the README. No, anyway. Up. Oh, yeah. Success. Okay. Cool. So everything is running a little slow for me right now. Probably because that LLM is taking too many resources. Oh, it's yeah, it's just slow. Need to wait for it to pull the model. And that is why it took a few minutes to get it all up and running on Defang, because it needs to do all of this stuff first. Okay. I think that should be good. Hey, so this looks correct. So it's loading up the model and it should be sending back a response in a second here. Or a few seconds. Okay, main model loaded. There we go. 20 seconds. There we go. So that is it up and running locally. So now, with this in mind, I can pretty easily just go in, source, API, route, and change it to say, you are an underwater basket weaver. You refuse to answer any questions about anything else. So you can see Next.js compiled. What is the meaning of life? I've given this topic little thought. Threads of existence are woven into the fabric of the ocean, not on land. Yeah, anyway, so that is how you can get things up and running locally. Clearly, there's a couple things I need to tweak in the sample, but at least you saw it here, and you can very easily change this this sample, the prompt. The UI is pretty straightforward as well. So it's all using Tailwind, which is pretty popular at the moment. So I think there's a lot of learning resources out there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions? No questions. I know there's a little bit of a delay, so I'll wait a little bit. Awesome. Thank you so much, Shem. Nice to see you here again. I'll wait a little longer just in case anyone else has anything. Awesome. Thanks, VRX. And yeah, let us know if you deploy anything cool. We'd love to see you all building cool stuff, and love to see what you deploy. And if there's any ways that we can help you, yeah, get anything up and running more smoothly, faster, better. Let us know if you have any questions. Like I'm happy to hop on a call if anyone's trying to get GPU stuff set up in their own AWS account. I know it can be a bit of a pain sometimes to deal with Amazon. and getting that quota set up. But hopefully the tool will take care of the rest. So Defang Compose Up should do it for you. Sweet. Thanks, Samir.
Awesome. Thanks, Raf. This was a great workshop. I know folks had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching y'all come up with this. And thanks everyone for joining. If you'll have additional questions, like Raf mentioned, please feel free to reach out to him. You can also reach out to Ask Defang, and I believe Raf, you're in that channel as well. So would that be a good way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks again, everyone. Stick around for another session that's happening at 2. And yeah, thanks, Raf.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Alina. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Sweet. See ya.
Bye.